Welcome back to another edition. This is part two of Bari Tessler's 21 things that I've reduced to 20 things that your financial therapist would like you to know. So let's jump into them. Number 11 on her list was discover the equation of money, time, energy, family, and health. And by this, as Barry explained in our podcast, that we all need a touchstone. We all need, by a touchstone, it's something that would ground us. It's something that we can come back to in times of making a decision and to say, does this align with our values? For example, my financial planning firm's purpose is to transform the emotional and financial well-being of people. So that's a touchstone. In other words, when we're looking at embarking on something or adding something or doing something, the question is this going to help transform a person's relationship with or financial or emotional well-being, and transform their relationship with money. And then we also have values that we can also measure and say, does the decision align with our company values? So the same thing is true personally, is for us to have a touchstone of values or a personal mission statement that can inform and guide every financial decision that we make. And for Barry, that is coming back to the intersection of money, time, energy, family, and health. Do I have the health to do this? Is this going to improve my health? Is it going to improve my relationships? Do I have the energy to do this? How much time is this going to take? How much money? Do I have the resources to do this? So these are not the same for every person. They can be very different for people, but it's really important to have this, or we can kind of get off track, on our decisions and go down rabbit holes and roads that really are not getting us to our values, that are not progressing us to where we want to go. And like about every policy or mission statement, it's good to take a little time to do this. There's a number of ways that you can discover your own values. I know Elizabeth Jaton has a process of doing this where you can go through about 140 different values and come out with the top 5 or top 10 that really sing to you. And there's a lot of exercises and places you can go to discover these, but it makes sense to take some time to do it while you're not in crisis. I mean, the time to figure out your values is typically not when you're in the thick of it, right? Of having to make a decision, especially if it's very, very quick. But if it takes a crisis to get on the path to saying, I need to figure this out, then of course that's how life evolves for us and unfolds. Number 12 is having compassion for your financial mistakes. And then maybe it's a little bit morbid, but like dying, financial mistakes are not an if, they're a when, right? I'm always amused when I hear myself say, if something happens to my wife, or if something happens to my parents, And I think really what's a little bit more factual and honest to say is when my wife dies, when my parents die, when something happens, especially when we're talking about death. It's not if, it's when. And financial mistakes are the same. It's not if we're going to make a financial mistake. It's when we make a financial mistake. And I mean, you can't be listening to this podcast and not have made a financial mistake, right? I, I mean, maybe you're 5 years old. I don't know. I think it's possible even for a 5-year-old to have made a financial mistake. But so it's when. And like we talked about last time, we all do the best that we can do in the moment. So we need to have compassion for our financial mistake. And I'd like to say they're almost so-called mistakes because they are growth opportunities for us. In some of the recovery programs I've been in, we've called them AFGOs, another effing growth opportunity. That's not bringing a lot of compassion to them, but it's bringing understanding that our mistakes are opportunities to grow. So when we make a mistake, Bari suggests that we offer ourselves some loving grace, compassion, and forgiveness around the mistake. And celebrate every step, every brave leap, every lesson that we learn along the way. Because a mistake can be another learning of, okay, that doesn't work. Or here's how we could tweak that to be a success. I can't give you the examples right now, but I think there's all sorts of inventions and foods and things like that that were complete mistakes that turned out to be brilliant, right? So have compassion for your financial mistakes. And think about this, number 13, is that mistakes made are lessons learned, all right? So that's turning them into important lessons. The classic book, The Millionaire Next Door by Stanley and Danko, points out, and you've heard me say this before, the average millionaire makes 3.1 major financial, career, or business mistakes in their life. What's the average non-millionaire make? 1.6 such mistakes. Okay, almost half. So people that have accumulated wealth on average have made twice the mistakes, big mistakes, that people that have not accumulated the wealth have made. So mistakes are something to be celebrated. I said before, I think I at one time figured out I had made 5 really big, major financial mistakes in my life, and I thought, maybe I should be a billionaire by now. I'm not. But mistakes are not something to beat yourself up over. They are necessary learning opportunities that will lead you to financial well-being. So the really important thing isn't to be sure you don't make financial mistakes. It's to be sure that when you do make financial mistakes, that you capitalize on that opportunity, right? By embracing them, learning from them. The worst thing that we can do with a financial mistake is to ignore it. All right. Her 14th is that the biggest money shifts are quiet. The biggest money shifts are quiet. Before a money shift can become externally visible, before the behavior changes, before you become a saver versus a spender, before you decide to be clear on an estate plan, before you do just about anything to improve a money behavior, to start changing self-sabotaging behaviors. The shift has to happen internally, right? Again, can you learn information and make a shift? Boom, yes, it can be cognitive, but in 80% of the time, this is emotional. This is something that's deeply embedded in us, and the shift has to happen internally. In my work with my financial therapy clients, I find that money shifts usually begin pretty deeply as I'm working with someone to discover the origin of their money scripts and the stories behind how those money scripts formed, the various things that happened that we just don't take a time out in adulthood to sit down and spend an hour surveying that landscape. And as we begin to understand our past, and sometimes those stories are formed in money woundings and financial woundings, and more oftenly than not, they're formed in sometimes woundings and traumas that don't even seem related to money. But once we take the opportunity to take the time to explore that territory, and in IFS speak, with all the various parts of ourselves, the managers and the firefighters and the exiles, how we have woven these extreme beliefs, these money scripts, into our story, begin to pop out. And so the healing, the deep understanding of how those behaviors served us when we were young and how they're no longer serving us, that aha that comes, that beautiful awareness of, wow, I have never connected those dots, starts first kind of deep within us before it begins to work its way into modifying a behavior. And that's why, like we talked about last time, the strong arming our behavior doesn't work, right? What's the saying? You can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. Okay? We cannot be forcing the head of that horse down into water, and that's what we're doing when we're trying to strong arm a new behavior. It's got to start deep, and that is typically kind of in the quiet recesses of ourselves where these major shifts are made. So, similar to that, number 15, tiny money shifts add up to big changes. So as these deep shifts happen, as these tiny awarenesses begin to grow and accumulate, they often begin to show up externally in the smallest of ways. Now, some people do make big shifts, just boom. I've never been one of those. So I think we can set ourselves up for failure if we're overspending by $3,000 a month and we think 1 month we'll just boom cut $5,000 out of our budget and start saving $2,000. It typically doesn't work that way. It typically starts pretty small, and it can be really easy for us to dismiss this. So, it could be something small like just decreasing spending by a few dollars a week. There's an unlimited amount of things we could come up with, but maybe I do a Starbucks every day. That's $5. And maybe I cut that down to 5 a week or 4 a week, right? Well, what difference is $15 a week going to make? It's going to make a difference because it's a small step, right? How about increasing how much we're putting into our 401k? Maybe by 1 or 2% of our income. Wow, that's not going to get me there. I need to be saving 10%, 15% of my income. Yeah, it all starts with a step. And if we make that first step too big, then we're just not going to take it, right? We'll get very disappointed much of the time. So, maybe it's looking at your auto insurance policy or your home insurance policy, and there's so many unneeded coverages that we get sold. And I know I used to have a planner on my staff that would go through a person's policies and come up with $30, $50, $75 of savings. And sometimes clients would chuckle, that it would almost seem so meaningless. Well, I mean, where's the dollar amount that you're going to say, no, I'm not going to save that, right? I mean, what's the difference in analyzing something if you can figure out $75 of unneeded spending or $750 or $7,500 or $75,000? It's all the same mindset. It's all the same process. So I like that Bari says every baby step is forging a new path forward. And it's true. Every time you use these tools, you're building what Bari calls money muscles, right? You're writing a new narrative. You're showing up in brave new ways. And that is really crucial in continuing to make progress. Number 16 is trust your timing, not anyone else's, especially with money. It's really important. I read some research on this recently, how comparing ourselves to others is just a setup for emotional disaster. And it's really true with money, right? We can always compare somebody who's richer than we are, unless you are Elon Musk. I think Elon Musk has surpassed Bezos. But that's it. There's only one person on the planet that somebody isn't richer than they are. And it's probably true with being poor. But the point is that it doesn't matter. What matters is your timing, your path, your progress. Alcoholics Anonymous has a slogan. It's called progress, not perfection. Perfection is elusive. Perfection is impossible, right? So it's really important that we continue to make progress and celebrate every step forward that we make. And also remembering, kind of with some of the stuff we've already talked about, is that every step backward is not failure. Every seeming relapse is not failure. So our path toward financial well-being is intensely personal, and there's no right way to do it. What is important is that we make progress. One day at a time is the slogan that the AA program uses. Also, understanding number 17, that there's ebbs and flow in life and money. The relapses that we talked about are normal. They're important. I mean, our best constructed and put together financial plans and blueprints are going to need to be modified because life is going to change. And life will almost always change unexpectedly. So financial planning is not a static one and done. It's, you've heard me say that before. It's a process. It's ongoing. And changes are often difficult to negotiate. Not only those bringing challenges like death of a partner or a child, or divorce or sickness, which can all have their difficulties, but also those that are positive can be difficult to negotiate, right? Job promotions, inheritances, sudden money events that change our life seemingly for the positive can bring up almost as many difficult emotions, if not more, than those that seem to be negative to us. So the point with all of this is it's really important to bring compassion and understanding to ourselves during these times. And again, if you have a hard time doing that, I would encourage you to look into internal family systems therapy. That's definitely given me some tangible ways to do that. Number 18 is learn a bookkeeping system. We talked about that this one was coming. Bari, right? She's a bookkeeper. And she contends this is a vital step to your money journey. And I would say almost every one of my clients who is successful around spending less than they earn has a bookkeeping system. But that does not mean they use Mint or Intuit, or many of the bookkeeping systems are out there. Quicken. Most of them, in fact, don't. And I think I've talked about this before, that a lot of them, their bookkeeping system is, when I get in $1, I pay my taxes first. If they're a tither, they pay their tithe. They pay all of their payments, mortgages, obligations, things like that. They pay all of their fixed expenses, which could be, normal recurrent monthly expenses. They fund their retirement plans or invest a certain percent of money. When all that's done, they blow the rest, and they have no clue what it goes to. That's a bookkeeping system. And quite frankly, it's probably the most normal bookkeeping system of those who accumulate money. It's just they pay themselves first. They pay all their obligations. They pay everything before getting to money they spend on their lifestyle. So you can do that, but you need to know how much money is coming in, and you need to know where it's going, right, to create financial freedom. So you can get all sorts of bookkeeping systems. The one I just described is very simple. You can get those that are complex. You can get really amazing systems online and apps. But the important denominator is that it's something that works for you. And Bari emphasizes that you are worth the time and energy that it takes to develop a routine, right? And then learn that routine and navigate it. It won't be easy. As she said in our interview, learning to do bookkeeping for a therapist is probably one of the greatest accomplishments, because it's so difficult for those that don't normally and naturally live in their left brain to do. So pick a system, start. You can always modify it if it doesn't work. As Bari says, it isn't a lifelong, lifetime commitment. It's a stepping stone to get you where you want to go. Number 19, money can be fun, lighthearted, joyously creative. I think some of you are like, what? How can it be fun? I taught George Kinder's 2-day 7 essentials program. We would ask people, what's your earliest joyful money memory? And oftentimes a third of the people couldn't come up with any joyful money memory. Remember, money itself is inanimate. It's not inherently good or bad. It's up to you to decide what your relationship with money looks like. Oftentimes when I spoke in the past, I would ask people, I'm going to say a word and I want you to write down the first 5 words that come up. Okay, you ready? Money. And I would say that it wasn't unusual that 75% of the room, the 5 words, would suggest that if that was a love relationship they were describing, the relationship was in big trouble. But your relationship with money can be great. Barry will say you can pop some popcorn and throw on your favorite Pump Me Up tune before you start paying your bills or reading your bank statement. That you can have fun around money. And absolutely, when you learn to provide enough money, when you learn to pay yourself first, it takes away a huge amount of anxiety. And you can actually go forth and spend with confidence, so to speak, that you've provided for, you have enough, you can be enjoying this. And finally, we all have a money story, but our past doesn't have to equal our future. In Dickens' famous fable, A Christmas Carol, of which I co-authored a book, The Financial Wisdom of Ebenezer Scrooge, Scrooge's relationship with money was fully transformed, right? We think of the Scrooge at the beginning of the book, not the end of the book. What was his path to transformation? He looked at his historical money story. He looked in the past. He saw how that was influencing how he was showing up, right? Because our past influences our present. And then he made a conscious decision to change the future. I really agree with Bari when she says every day presents a new opportunity to bring more loving mindfulness to our relationship with money. So like Scrooge, you too can choose to change the outcome of your money story. I have seen scores and hundreds of people do that. So if you want more information on your healing journey, check out Bari's online course, The Art of Money. Her book, The Art of Money, A Life-Changing Guide to Financial Happiness. And as I'm recording this, she has a second book that's coming out that you can get on Amazon, and I think it may be in pre-order. So thanks for listening again. I hope that this series of the wisdom of Bari Tessler has been helpful. I would say a lot of this is adaptation by myself. So if you've heard something you don't like, it probably wasn't Bari, it probably was me. So, okay, thanks. Take care. I look forward to speaking with you next week.